Now I'm going to totally tear limb from limb Bill Maher. Bill Maher, most of you know who he is. He's, a hack comedian. When I say hack comedian, I mean, like, have you ever watched the guy stand up? Oh, painful. Woo-hoo-hoo, painful. There are comedians I disagree with, like politically, who I know are talented comedians. I can disagree with someone and not call them a hack. Bill Maher, hack. His stand-up routines, he claims to write himself. His show, he can't write, which is why his stand-up routines probably suck so bad. His show, he is incapable of writing, apparently, because when the writer strikes it's now happened to him twice. He gets really angry with the writers, and he claims he funds some of their salary, but he's a scab at the same time. He actually announced he was going to be a scab, but then the strike ended, I think, before he actually did it. But anyway, claims to be a liberal, but he's actually, believe it or not, I know liberal is right-wing enough. Like liberals pro-CIA, pro-FBI, pro-war, pro-proxy war in Ukraine, pro-genocide in Israel. So liberal is disgusting enough. But he's actually pulling to the right on a lot of domestic issues. You hear a lot of the things he's been saying, they fit perfectly with the MAGA crowd, but which is hilarious because the way he claims to be a liberal is that he hates Donald Trump. Anyway, here he is talking about Israel and the genocide they're committing. He doesn't use that term, of course, right? They're just fighting a war. They're just fighting a war against mostly children.
Group under 35, Trump leads Biden. Wow. Yeah. You lose the kids. And this is mostly, I think, because of a wedge issue. I don't know if people really know what a wedge issue is. That means a wedge within the parties.
First of all, he talks to you like you're an idiot. You've never heard of a wedge issue? I don't know if people know what a wedge issue is.
Something that divides people within the Democratic Party. And for that is the kids love Hamas.
Okay, first of all, completely false bullshit, false dichotomy, all of those things. The kids love Hamas. Basically, if you're anti-genocide now, they call you a Hamas lover. It's all garbage. It's all lies. But on top of that, you'll notice that in that split second, he smiles because he thinks he's going to get a laugh. He gets zero laugh. Now, the reason he thought he was going to get a laugh is because he thinks everyone agrees with him. Oh, these crazy kids love him. But the crowd who loves him, right? These are his fans. The crowd who loves him is probably thinking, because I've been a comedian for 25 years, they're probably thinking like, wait, what's he talking about? Because they don't know anyone who loves Hamas. They might know people who are anti-genocide. They might know people who don't want to see bombs rain down on children. But they're going, I don't know kids who are pro-Hamas. But then he adds another punchline to get a laugh, which the crowd then realizes they're supposed to laugh, and so they do. Anyway, watch again how little gets zero laugh.
The kids love Hamas.
See, that breath, he does that breath when he thinks he's getting a laugh. There was not a chuckle. This is an audience of a few hundred people. No one laughed. Then he throws in his extra punchline, which is a cue to the audience. That was supposed to be a joke.
And who couldn't? Who couldn't resist them? I mean, they behead babies. Yeah. Or do they?
He then throws in the they behead babies, which is not true at all. There's been no evidence brought forward, but you'll see in a minute he continues to claim it's true. There's no evidence of the beheading babies. Even Biden, even the Joe Biden White House had to backtrack, had to retract their claim, Biden's claim, that he saw video of Hamas beheading babies. Even the lying liar, sack of liars, oh my God, you're lying, can you ever stop lying, White House retracted the claim that there's video of Hamas beheading babies.
Oh, this is interesting, yes. See, now there's something called they're calling them, remember 9/11 truthers? These are October 7th deniers. You've read about this?
Yes, I have.
This is the Washington Post.
By the way, the two people he has on with him are Seth MacFarlane, here's a good example. I can admit something's funny while thinking the guy is a goddamn moron. Seth MacFarlane, I think Family Guy is a quality show. It gets old after a few episodes, but I think it's when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, Family Guy, very funny. And he's also with Adam Schiff, Congressman Adam Schiff, who is a sack of shift. Adam Schiff is the lead guy. If there was one person in all of Congress who built up and endorsed every lie about Russiagate that has all collapsed, it is Adam Schiff. Everything he said about Russia has completely been obliterated. So if you were him and you had gone in front of America day in, day out, claiming all of this garbage, and now it's all been proven false, how stupid would you look? Why would anyone have you on to talk things again? Why would you ever be on a TV show speaking about anything if you had lied or been that wrong for that long? But here he is on the Bill Maher Show.
A small but growing group denies the basic facts. Some, they say Israel staged this to justify their invasion of Gaza. The hostages, not really, they were kidnapped by Israel. The United States is behind the whole thing.
Okay, so he puts forward, and he's reading a Washington Post article, which I'm going to tell you a little about in a second, but Bill Maher puts forward things that no one says. No one. I mean, yes, there are probably 7 lunatics online who say that October 7th didn't happen. And they have to pretend this is a big deal. But as even as Aramate says here in his quote, what Bill Maher's quoting from is a Washington Post article that calls it a small but growing movement. What do you think a small but growing movement means to the Washington Post when they're trying to justify this genocide? They found 8 people and they said it's a small but growing movement. There is no one saying October 7th didn't happen. There are many, such as the New York Times, saying Israel knew it was going to happen for a long time, such as a year beforehand. Even the New York Times has admitted that Israel knew this was going to happen. They might not have known the date, but they knew it was going to happen for up to a year beforehand and supposedly ignored it. Now, you can argue about what that means, but no one's saying what he's saying. I mean, if there are, they're lunatics. Sure, there's flat earthers too, and there's people who think, that aliens are in their anal cavity right now as we speak. But that doesn't make it a small but growing movement. Besides, you could call anything a small but growing movement. There's a small but growing movement of Americans who put dung beetles into their nostrils and then say they feel high. Like, what does small but growing movement mean? Mate says about the Washington Post article that Bill Maher's reading from right there. The author purposefully conflates this non-existent movement with independent journalists who point out what's reported in Israel media but censored here, that Israeli forces killed some of their own people on October 7th. The Washington Post article is conflating 2 things. One that is essentially non-existent, which is October 7th never happened. It was all CGI. And then a very big movement of people who are quoting things like Israeli media. So, and by the way, I'm in this group, quoting things like Israeli media, quoting things like the New York Times, although it's a tiny little one sentence hidden in their various articles, quoting things such as the police report about the Nova Music Festival, where IDF and Israeli border police killed a lot of people, quoting things like the interview with the Israeli tank gunner who said she was told to fire on civilians. And she said, aren't there civilians in that building? And the commander said, I don't know, just fire. And so she decided to only fire with her gun instead of her tank. But of course, they're conflating these 2 things, because when you can't refute something, the key is to lump it in with something that's utterly insane. And that's what Bill Maher is doing. And that's what the Washington Post did.
This is a professor in New York. Don't take what the media says. They try to say you're supporting rapists and people that behead babies, both of which, we know it's not true.
Before you even hear his response, does that journalist sound insane? Academic professor, that Hamas didn't behead babies and that so far there's been no evidence of rape? Anyway, here's Bill Maher's response to that.
Which, we know it's not true. No, we know it is true. They purposely filmed it.
Utterly false. Utterly false. Do you think if they filmed it, we wouldn't have, that wouldn't have been put everywhere by Israel? Israel would love to have film of Hamas doing this crap. But even the White House had to retract their statement saying there was film, there was proof of this. The babies that were killed on October 7th, many of them, or maybe all of them, were burned in these horrible, horrific burnings, which, as Israel has admitted, those burning, where whole buildings burned, and you had dozens, if not more, of people all burned together. Israel had to reduce the number of dead on October 7th, dead Israelis, from 1,400 to 1,200 because they admitted that many of the burned bodies were Hamas militants. Well, if the burned bodies were Hamas militants, who didn't do the burning? I got an idea. Probably the Hamas militants. If they were burning the people, they didn't burn themselves. So why did they end up burned with the hostages and other innocent people? Because the IDF was just bombing. They were firing tank rounds at whole buildings. We know this. It's called the Hannibal Directive. This isn't even secretive anymore. However, Bill Maher is certain something is real that no one has ever produced proof of.
And we have the footage.
And then both McFarlane and Adam Schiff nod along as if there's any truth to this.
It's very on brand for social media.
And then Seth MacFarlane, Dummy McDumdum over here, tries to add something in.
And it's very on brand for the planet as far as its relationship with the Jews over many centuries. We have this weird...
Okay, so Seth MacFarlane is doing exactly what Israel wants in their propaganda, which is to conflate Israel with Judaism. These are two separate things. Yes, Israel is a Jewish state, but guess what? You can be Jewish, like myself, and not be a Zionist. There are millions of anti-Zionist Jews. There are millions of Jews around the world who are anti-genocide, like really anti-genocide, not pretend anti-genocide, like the many of the Jews in Israel. Seth MacFarlane is diving headfirst into that conflation, into that conflating of acting like, oh, well, Bill Maher just talked about Israel and talked about Hamas and therefore Jews. Nobody should ever do that. And if anybody you're ever speaking to does that, you say, look, I'll debate with you about this topic, but we weren't talking about Jews in general around the world, because Israel does not equal Jews. And Israel wants you to conflate those two because they want you to believe that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. And Seth MacFarlane dives hook, line, and sinker into it, to mix a metaphor. I don't know if you can dive hook, line, and sinker. I don't know if that would make you the hook, line, and sinker. It'd be weird. Like if you were a hook, line, and sinker, that'd be a weird thing to be. I don't think you should be that.
Weird stalkerish relationship to the Jewish people.
Then he says that, which blows my mind. I have no idea what he's talking about, but it's almost more disturbing than everything else said here. The world has a stalkerish relation to Jews. I'm sorry, I haven't ever felt stalked because I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
It's the most bizarre thing. We have like something like
No, your statement is the most bizarre thing.
60% of the religious-based hate crimes in this country are committed against Jewish people, which are 2% of the population. So what does that tell you?
If that stat's real, you know who's creating a lot of the anti-Semitism? Israel. Because Israel's telling you to think that all Jews are Israel, and Israel is all Jews. And therefore, if you're anti-genocide, which means you're sane, which means you're a person that cares about other human beings, if you're one of those people that is anti-genocide, all of a sudden, some people are dumb enough to then hate Jews because they see the genocide going on against Palestinians. They say, I'm anti-genocide, therefore I'm anti-Jew. There are some people like that. Now, they're idiots, but they do exist. So Israel is furthering anti-Semitism. They're creating anti-Semitism.
I feel this keenly because I'm the subject of a lot of that hate online. And it's so hard to set the record straight and correct all the disinformation out there.
It is hilarious to hear Adam Schiff, king of disinformation, the face of Russiagate, the face of undermining and arresting and censoring and destroying all journalism that told the truth for years. I mean, this guy is the face of it. And again, if you're new to my stuff and you have no idea what I stand for or what I believe, I hate Donald Trump as much as anyone. I am left-wing. I believe in people and humanism and equality and anti-war and creating evolving past capitalism into a world where we actually can all care for each other and actually live in the post-scarcity world in which we exist, in which there's no reason anyone should be without a roof over their head or without clothing, or without food, or should be abused. That is what I believe. And I, along with countless others, had their careers and parts of their lives, I wouldn't say I had my life destroyed, but many did, because of the garbage of Russiagate and the McCarthyism connected to it. And Adam Schiff was the front of that disinformation for years. That has all collapsed. Even the indictments that that Mueller brought against the clickbait farm in St. Petersburg, even those indictments were dropped by the court because they had no evidence linking clickbait farm to anything the Russian government was doing. Anyway, so this piece of human feces wants to tell you about the problem of disinformation.